Before I go on and watch more, I want to give an example of an ethical dilemma and how I handle this dilemma. And it should be an interesting example, even though you're not really interested in such cases, because if only because it's an example that sort of shows something that can be interpreted as a failure in my ethical system. But I'm fine with that because I'm willing to take responsibility for the way my ethical system analyzes bizarre circumstances. In other words, I go ahead and care about these dilemmas, but I admit that in some cases, funny things happen and funny decisions have to be made in ethical dilemmas. And ultimately, I justify that in terms of not all things are clear ethically. Some things truly are ethically complicated. And ethics basically breaks down in some situations. And you start to have things that are based on judgment calls. Because ultimately, like everything, ethics is based on judgment calls made on hopefully small and potentially clear issues. Okay, the dilemma, and I'll try to do this quickly. I don't know how quickly I can do it. Is the trolley dilemma. So quickly, you're standing at a switch, a a, a trolley's on a track going um, along a track that there's 5 people tied to the track, and you're standing at a switch that could switch the trolley onto another track where only one person is tied. And the question is, what do you do? Do you switch it to the one person? I guess people say supposedly people tend to switch it to the one person. Okay, this dilemma has a follow-up question that I don't think really helps the situation. But it is interesting. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But I would say no, you don't switch, and the reason is because I have a sort of Hippocratic ethical system, more or less. At the bottom of my ethical system is a do no harm principle, and for all I know, those 5 people tied to the track are you know, the criminals that set the situation up. Maybe there's the only real victim is on the other track. But even if I recognize the people, and I know that not to be the case, I have a do no harm principle. On the other hand, I if I was I have an alternate version of this, and if I was to wake up behind the wheel of a car that's driving in a crowd of people, I would steer to the outskirts. I would steer to the outskirts of that crowd, because in that case, I'm behind the wheel and I feel more in control, and that's really the only difference, is how much control and therefore responsibility do I feel in the situation, and also, sort of how specific is my attempt. I mean, when I'm going to steer to the outskirts of this crowd and hit, fewer people, but still hit people probably, there's a chance that I might miss everybody. There's uh, an element there of being able to try to avoid and lessen harm. But that's really the only difference, is my feeling of responsibility and the sense that I've introduced there, where, I'm, in this case, trying to reduce the harm. Now, if you take that back on the trolley, you could say that I'm steering the trolley, and it's the same thing. It's steering to the one person while it's certain that they'll die, is trying to lessen the harm. And in that case, what can I say but that ethical systems do break down? I can see that someone would make the decision to steer the trolley. I don't think there is any perfect ethical decision in these cases, and so I would sympathize with somebody that made this other decision. And my ethical system um, is how I would react in that situation. Not to be assumed to be how I think everybody should react. Now, in ordinary ethical situations, it can be a lot more clear. They can be sorted out sometimes so that it's a lot more clear what you should do ethically. And in these situations, a do not harm principle works really, really well. So I'll stick with it.